Sometimes you just need to turn off the distractions, get to work, and find the universal truths that affect us all and that govern our universe. This is a good place to do that. Mark Fults and Kat Hobson will try to help with that a bit by bringing fantastic guests. Let's see what's happening tonight.
Welcome to Universal Truths with Mark Fults, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful downtown Birmingham, Alabama. And I am coming to you from my home near Pensacola, Florida. And tonight, I haven't been able to be here for a couple of weeks because I got COVID, got over COVID. Then I got strep. So I'm just now gotten back to being a living human being. But I can see how COVID can make you feel like you're going to croak. I mean, because I absolutely had my doubts for about a week. So anyone who's had to have it, I'm so sorry that you've had to experience it. But, you know, when things happen to me like that, I throw it in my little red wagon and just pull it behind me. So now, what are we going to talk about tonight? Because, you know, we always talk paranormal things and I'm always trying to find something interesting to bring to all of you sitting out there in the dark listening to my voice. And tonight I'm going to discuss, this is the 30th anniversary of when I was murdered back in 1992. And I'm going to cover some of that information. I'm going to cover the death process that was happening because I had two very close near-death experiences. I'm going to give you some information about the attack and stuff, but it's such a big story, and I'm such a yacker. I've got to make sure I'm getting across what I want you to hear. And I know I use a lot of my shows, a lot of my conversations. I use the event that I was attacked and killed because I was murdered. You know, it's not a poor, pitiful me. No. It's part of my journey. And it always explains for me where I'm working because I work at a metaphysical store. So when people, like today, a woman sat down and said, "Can you talk to spirits?" And I had to go, "Yeah, I've been murdered, before, so I have a knack for it." And I talked to her deceased son and helped her, and it's a very strange bag of tricks. It was a horrible, horrifying, terrible event when it happened. But the person that I became off of it, I can't say I would have changed it because I had to go through this. I had to become who I am. So I can't begrudge it. And the way that it happened and fell into place was so strange. It was part of my destiny. And the death process taught me so much afterwards because you experience it, but you really don't understand the process until you start dissecting it. And then by dissecting it, I learned so much about our mechanisms. Our bodies are made to live, but our bodies, as soon as we die, they have a mechanism to start decomposition and they go, okay, it's not being used anymore. This is what it's going to do. Your body is a very busy thing. And when you die, there's a process that we go through. And I'm going to say, I think it's universal. And it's so incredible when it gets to a certain point that you're okay with going because it's so wonderful. But there's a mechanism to it. There's a design to it. There's a process because your brain tries to download everything it has because that's your information of this life. So it starts downloading so you can take that information with you. And that's how, your life flashes before you. Well, I'll explain how it kind of flashed before me. The process that does it. So there's a mechanism and a process for all of it. It's very complicated, but simply complex. And it's so the way that you feel when you're dying is so nice once you get past a certain point that it's maybe where I'm not afraid of death. I just don't like, I'm like anyone else. I don't want to suffer and drag on and do that. But the process when it starts to happen is so good that, when it happens again, I'll just go with it, if it's allowed. Because let me tell you what, if it's your time, you just can't get away from it. And if it ain't your time, like it wasn't my time, no matter how many people were trying to get me to go ahead and die, it just did not happen. And my doctors were surprised. And two, before I explain some of this, I'm going to tell you, some of it's gross and sad. Some people go, well, it's really, that's upsetting information. But I'm telling it from a point 30 years later. And my life then was terrible. Terrible. At 30 years old, it was terrible. And my life now is I live in Florida. I live in a beautiful little tiny house, a little 900 square foot house. I have a basin, a Marquise basin in front of me. So every morning you see the water and you see boats. And there's the street that I'm on is a historic street in Florida. And so it was made 100 years ago out of bricks. And it was just wide enough for wagons and carriages and then cars. But it was very thin. But it was made mostly for wagons, so it's charming. I'd wake up and I look out and I see my flowers. I have all my pets. I have a good relationship of 16 years. I live in a house. You couldn't give me $1 million house that I would like any better than this little honey hut I live in. I have a store I work for. then I get to go in and be a metaphysical person and make a living being a metaphysical person, doing what I do. Because where I came from, you couldn't do this like this. I can go in and do readings. I do seancing. I do, I just made an 8-foot tall wicker man that for work, harvest, and effort. So at the end of August, we'll take this wicker man. Everyone they can buy a little ticket and put their wish on the wicker man. Then we'll burn it to send the wishes up for your work, harvest, and effort. And I get to experiment and do candles and do products, and I'm on a radio show, and I've done books. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm doing an album. I've got like 6 or 7 songs done already of metaphysical songs that I've written over 40 years that have finally come to fruition. And this fall, I'll be releasing videos and songs, and I'm an artist. So my life has blossomed so much in 30 years. Actually, my life has blossomed in 4 years in a way. At 60 years old, I would have been, if you had told me this is what would be happening to me, I would have gone, you're nuts. You're nuts. Because I was living in a place I never thought I would leave. And the universe just takes me where I need to go. If you touch the door and it opens, you go with it. If you don't, you wait for the next door. And I've learned to just go when the universe says go, I go. And so the stories I'm going to tell you are bad, rough, but understand I'm coming from the point of a person who's happy, the happiest I've ever been in my life. And the process I went through wasn't anything I would want someone else to have to go through. But if you go through it and you come out on the other end with these abilities, there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like the place I came from and the person I've become is just a huge arc. And I had to learn everything over. I had to learn everything over. And once I was survived my experience, I had to reteach myself. I had to learn how to walk again real quick. I did that in the hospital because at the time I was paralyzed for a little while from the waist down. And I had to really start to analyze who I was surrounding myself with, because the people who were with me when I got attacked were pond scum. And I went, I didn't realize they were pond scum. So I had to start going, I had to learn how to raise myself and rise up spiritually, rise up mentally, rise up in a way where I surrounded myself with people who were healing, who had something to offer to the world, or at least to themselves, that weren't takers. And I had to learn how to look at everybody a little differently. And then I had to go, well, this is who I am, and how am I going to be the person I want to be, which is a healer, an advisor, a psychic friend, basically, to people who come in looking for something they can't find anywhere else. And they come to psychics because they aren't going to get some of these answers out of a church or a hospital, or there are certain things that because what a psychic is we're just everyone has a soul, everyone has a spirit, and we're just working every day with the mechanisms of the consciousness that you connect with through your spirit, because we're not, our brain is very contained, and the psychic abilities are larger than that. And, we're using the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland and the neurons and the nucleuses of the neurons. And then we can, I teach people how to go into the cerebellum and look at all this ancient information that everyone has, even the little street person on the side, a little redneck, because I was a little redneck, came from a big redneck family. And I thought a little uneducated redneck person who just had this knowledge and things they wanted to. My experience is my experience. So what I have to offer is a little different than each person, but each person should offer something different. And you have to find that core in you. And see, when we're being raised in families, they go, no, you can't. People, they used to say things when I was young, like, be yourself, blah, blah, blah. They really didn't want us to be ourselves. They wanted us to be one of the Borg. They wanted us to be like them. And everything, the Borg, my family, the Borg, everything that I am, they were against. So when I was at the time of my attack, I was still trying to fit in and figure out, and being browbeaten and abused by people who didn't want me to be happy. They saw me as a punching bag. And I had to rise up from that, and rise up from being told you're stupid, you're ugly, you're worthless, and to go, no, I have worth, and to find your consciousness, to find your worth, to walk with confidence, to understand that you're here, your journey is different than anyone else's. You need to be developing who you are. If you're walking and doing what everybody else is doing, you're not paying attention to what you need to be doing. You need to be cutting a path. You need to be bringing your voice to the table. Whether it's, and if people don't listen to you and don't want you to do that, then you have to go be brave enough to see if you're brave enough to deal with them or not deal with them. In my case, I had to break away from everything, and I just felt like a alien spirit learning to walk amongst people, because it was such a shock. It was such a shock. And now at this age, I can say I am who I am. If I died tomorrow, if I died tonight, I am who I am. I'm very happy with the being that I am now. And it was all in there. It was all inside the body. It was always in there. I just had to allow it to come to the surface. And you have to learn that too. You have to learn to go inside and listen to yourself. You're not stupid. You're not ugly. You're not that people act like you have to be trained to do something. If you're not trained, you don't know it. We have all the knowledge and information in us that we really need to find out what we need to do. So now we're going to have to go to a commercial. And when we get back, I will start to give you the information about how I was attacked, murdered, went through all that, and what's happened afterwards. So I tell you what, all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step, after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page, is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics, from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of, a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fults, and we are coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And before I go back into talking about when I was murdered, I have to let you know that if you ever want to see me in person, I work at a store in Pensacola called Live and Let Live Metaphysical Store on 4622 Softly Field Road. And I'm one of three psychics. There's Tony Talley and Terry O'Connor, and all of us are 60 years old, so we have a lot of experience, and each one of us do different kinds of readings. So you're not going to get the same thing from either one of us, any of the three of us. but we all have our different expertises. And then Sal Gandolfo and Matthew Ferguson. Sal owns the store, and he and Matthew are metaphysical practitioners who they're great at helping you with finding the right thing, the mechanism to help yourself. And in metaphysics, we use all sorts of things. We use incense and candles and oils and personal and improvement things. So if you come to them, they're very, very experienced in helping you find your metaphysical needs. And Sal, his family, his great-grandfather was Voodoo Charlie, who I believe his family started some of the New Orleans voodoo museums. They had a part in it. So, and his great-grandfather painted a beautiful portrait of Marie Laveau that's in the museum. It's very famous. So if you want to come and see me, that's the place to see me. Call first to make sure I'm there, because I'm there more on Fridays and Saturdays. Friday from 2 to 7, and then or 2 to 6 usually, and then Saturday from 11 to 7. And if you want to come and see me, but I'm not there, if you let me know ahead of time, I can come in and meet you there. So come and see us sometime. We have fun. It's a great store. But we're going to get back to the subject. And I was just telling you the stories I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you all the details of it, because it is long and drawn out, because it opened my eyes to how people really can be. I really think I was so naive at 30 that I just didn't know people could be wolves, that they really could be evil. And I should have known. I knew there was a lot of evil going on, because, I have a family. And they were pretty good at doing some rotten things. And, but, them aside, the outside world out there, I had a very bad background, very bad. We came from a middle class, upper middle class family as far as income. There was plenty of stuff. It was not that. It was a very abusive background that I came from. And when I was born, they wanted a girl. They didn't get a girl, so they didn't want me. And so when I was 3, and I was kind of like a feminine, I was very fragile. I was sick. I have Marfan's, which is a connective organs and tissues disease, and it keeps you very skinny, and you just look like, a stick most of your life. That was my nickname, because people would throw me like a stick. And I had 2 brothers, so they already had, healthy boys, and I had a sister. They wanted another girl. They didn't get a girl. So when I was 3, and I was fragile and kind of feminine and had a little squeaky voice, and my aunt started going, "Oh, well, he's going to be, one of those." And so they were embarrassed, and they always did. If they felt like somebody had done something bad to them, they had to do it to someone else. And I even got on my mother about that. And she'd say, "Well, somebody did it to me. I have to do it. They did it to me. I'm doing it to you." And that's how they were. And I'm the opposite. I always felt like if you don't like it being done to you, don't do it to someone else. And I was the only person in my family who felt like that. So from the age of 3, my aunts were picking on me. My father just if you weren't a boy that wanted to go out and kill everything or shoot everything, you just were in the wrong place. And because his grandfather was an Apache who had been adopted as a baby, and so his mother's family was, I mean, her daddy was the Apache, and so they worked on a farm. They were just as rough as rocks, and gentle people did not fit into the circumstance. Now, his dad was a sweetheart, but he was grabbed, he got married into the wrong crowd. And then my father was just a very cruel person, very brilliant person. I mean, he worked in computers and such, but he was just a cruel person. I was always fascinated with what he could do. Now, I inherited his ability to be creative, how to fix something, how to think outside the box. But from the age of 3 on, he really hated my guts. And I was the last one. I had a lot of time with my mother when I was like 3 and 4, and he was jealous of that. And he just saw me as something in the way of his relationship with Mom. I thought that was bizarre. So, so I grew up in a family who didn't want me, didn't care for me, and my arms would come out of place when I was little. So when I was 6, my father thought, well, we'll toughen him up. So my arms would come out of place. I'd come in and cry because it hurts terribly. And they would take me to the doctor, and it was $25, and the doctor would reset my arm, and I'd be all right for another month. Well, the last time it happened, where they knew it, when I came in and was screaming and crying, my dad put me on the big couch, put his knee on my chest, and pulled not only the arm out of place, he pulled the shoulder out of place. And then when he let go, it all kind of, eventually moved back into place. But I was in shock at 6 years old. And he goes, you're never going back to a doctor for this. If it happens to you again, I'm going to do this again. He knew it was terrible. And so the next time my arm came out of place, I didn't cry. I would go to school with my arm out of place. I wouldn't let them know it was out of place because what he did was such a shock to my body. I would go around with my arm out of place. And I didn't see a doctor until I was in my 20s, which was much too late because it damaged my arms would come out of place, my hip would come out of place. So, I just lived my life in a lot of pain. But they went, well, it'll toughen him up. So I was always very fragile, very tiny. When I was 30 years old, when the attack happened, I was 6'2" and 118 pounds. One time, I was so skinny. One time I was carrying a poster board, and I was about to cross the road, a freeway. The wind caught that board, and before I knew what happened, I was on the other side of the road. If a car would have hit me, I was like a stick, a bone, holding a sail, I was just so thin. You could see every bone in my body. And it was rough. And then when I was in my 20s, I had several tragedies. I was trying to learn how, I thought all my point of reference was trying to be a Fults, trying to be like my family. Well, anything I tried to do like them ended in disaster. And also, they didn't want me. So they didn't want me being like them. So everything I would do, I was stupid and ugly. And, you know, they just couldn't stand it. My father could not stand the sight of me. You would not believe, you know, when I'd come to the house, of course, everybody else could just walk in. After I left the house, and when I would come to the house, I had to knock on the door. And my father would come to the door, look at me, and say an explicit, very bad word. And I'd say, love you too. And I would come in. But it was, so I had this lovely, warm, kind family going on, which was not. So when I was 30, I reached a turning point. Because in my 20s, when I was 18, I went into metaphysics. And it's what made me live. And so I was in metaphysics, and at 30, I had just gotten away from the people, first group that I was with, because they turned bananas. They were crazy. And at first, I thought it was great, and I learned a lot. But then when they started getting bananas, I had to get out of there. And so I was on my own. I was about to start a new part of my life, but I was going through a lot of depression. And the friends that I was surrounded with I thought were okay, but really they weren't. They really, after all of this was over, they really were pond scum. And I thought, Mark, you've got to wake up. You got to raise first of all, your ability to look at people honestly, and then to, what was it in me that was going, it's all right to be around this person that turned out to be weird. And because my life was weird enough, but it got a little weirder. But anyway, in 1992, that week, I'll swear to you, the beginning of the week, I was living with two roommates in a place called Sail Creek, which is the other end of the place you want to be. It was beautiful, but it was very rough. You couldn't walk down the street to go to the store without some weird person giving you trouble. And it was in the woods, and everyone seemed to be, inbred, or, when I found out I was living between two KKK members, you could have seen the streak of me running down the street to get away from those people. But at that time, I just moved in with these people. I knew them through another friend, and we were having a good time. And that week, I had two things going, where one of my old friends that was at the time nice was moved back to town. So I was going to that Thursday go and see them first, and then I was going to go say goodbye to another friend who was going back to Atlanta. So it was a good week. I had just turned the corner on being happy, and at the bar we were going to, because we had friends who worked in a bar, and I found this person, and we were, there was a song out, Madonna's This Used to Be My Playground, and I loved it. And so we would dance to this song. And it was just the most innocent, sweet thing. He just liked dance. I like dance. We're talking about, it was nice. So very sweet friend. So it was a good evening. I really started off with, this is going to be a nice, get to say hello to an old friend and say goodbye to a new friend. And the three of us, my roommates, I will call them Dumb and Dumber. And I was the dumbest because I was their friend. I knew something. I had a premonition that week. I knew something was going to happen, but I wasn't astute enough yet to know what it was going to be, but I knew something was up. So I was aware. So when we got to this apartment complex, which at the time it was a very expensive place, and one of the roommates stayed in the car. He had the first cell phone I'd ever seen in my life, so he was talking on the phone. He didn't want, there was a party going on in the parking lot of this fancy apartment, and one of the roommates, that would be Dumber, because Dumb stayed in the car, Dumber got out and came with Dumbest. And I was walking ahead, and I was always aware of watching out in crowds, because as a child, I'd been attacked and beaten so many times at home, at school. So I was always, keep your eyes ahead, shut up, and just move. Get through it quickly. And there was all these drunk teenagers everywhere. And so I started heading up the sidewalk. Dumber was behind me. And I saw these three guys just staring us down. I don't know what it was. And I just went ahead. I ignored them, went ahead. And I heard somebody talking to my friend, Dumber. And I turned around and said, come on, get away from them. Come on. And I turned around. I knew that they were going to attack us. I just knew it. And when I talked to him later, he said, oh, no, I didn't think they were going to do anything. And I was panicking, trying to figure out. I'd forgotten. I couldn't even think of what my friend's apartment number was. I was looking at stairways and thought, oh, how am I going to get out of here? Because I was in a corner thing where there was a big 8-foot drop off, and I thought, we got to get out of here. And all of a sudden I heard Dumber scream. I turned around. They had grabbed him from behind and hit him when somebody was hitting him. Hit him once, hit him in the face. And I said, stop that. And they said, get him. So, here I am, 118 pounds, trapped in a corner. I couldn't get up the steps because all of these drunk teenagers, I'm telling you, there had to be 100 people out there. And they weren't letting me up the steps. So the first one that attacked, who followed the boss's orders, he was wanted to act like he was a karate kid. And he kicked me in the chest and knocked me off my feet. And he had fairly long legs. So he knocked me into the bushes up against the drop-off, the little thing. And every time I started trying to get up, he was kicking me and was trying to kick me over the wall. And if I was very fragile. If I'd fallen off the wall, it'd have been like a box of china. I'm going to have to pause because we have to go to break. But when we come back, I will continue this story. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello,
I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fults, and I'm coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. Now we're going to continue on talking about when I was attacked, and I died twice off of the experience. So I'm going to go into it. I won't tell you a whole lot of it, but I'll tell you some of it. But there were three guys. The one that the boss said, go get him. So he immediately was karate chopping me, doing whatever. And the thing is, when you're being attacked or you're going through something, it's like everything slows down and your sense of survival kicks in. And so, I was trying to figure out, I noticed, in between him kicking me, he would stagger back. And I watched it and I went, when he staggered back, I can get up. So he staggered back after hitting me. He kicked me like 6 or 7 times already. And there was 100 people watching. Everybody was watching fascinated. Nobody called the police. Nobody helped. Everybody just watched. It was entertainment. The 2 morons that were with me, I didn't know enough about them to know that, because one of them had a cell phone. He could have called the police. Well, he didn't want to call the police because, he didn't want the police looking at him either. I found that out later. So they were watching while this is going on. Nobody's going to get police, nothing. So I get up and almost get away. There was a kind of like a metal fence thing and an archway, and I thought, because he kept trying to kick me over this wall, and I thought, it'll kill me. Just the drop will kill me on the concrete. So I was heading for that, and they had their boss, the leader, blocked me. And that was it, really seriously in his eyes. It was like, here lies a dead duck. And he just had shark eyes. And I thought, this is it. And I got knocked down. And I was laying on my side. And I was out of breath because, he really was kicking the stew out of me. And so the leader started taking his heel and was trying to bust my skull on the asphalt repeatedly. The one who had been attacking me, kicking me, immediately started kicking my back. My doctor, when I went to the hospital, said my back was totally shoe prints of bruises. My whole back was heel marks, and because he was kicking my back. And then they had an 18-year-old person with him, and he waited until he made sure Mommy and Daddy had the kill down, and he ran up and he started kicking me in the abdomen and the groin area, and they were stomping my hips and my legs. And the one that had been kicking me, before, the one who started the whole thing, he also was he would jump and try to break my ribs. And then he would jump over me and was trying to kick my nose to break my nose bone and shove it up my head. So I covered my nose so they couldn't do that. Thank gosh. They got us. And but he was trying very hard to break my nose. And the only time I did call out, they wanted me to beg for my life, and I just wasn't doing it because nobody was helping. And I thought, I'm not going to sit here and beg them and watch them get a thrill out of it. I called for the one I called Dumb. I called his name thinking they would see that I was in trouble and they would help me. And I called his name, and when I did, the guy kicked my rib, broke it, it punctured my lung, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't say anything. And they broke 4 ribs, fractured them, collapsed my lung, knocked all of my organs loose from my sternum down. And because I have Marfan's, that makes you very flexible. It's a connective tissue. So if I had not had that, I would have I would not have survived enough to get to the hospital. But they were breaking things. And so there was somebody who kept track. They beat me for 15 minutes. And during the process of it, Dumbest did scream out, say, stop, he's got a bone disorder, which really I have a connective tissue order. And they went, well, he must have AIDS. And then that's when they really went into it. So 15 minutes later, because it's in the court transcripts, 15 minutes later, the only reason it stopped is they ran out of air. And when the people with me didn't want to get attacked. So they waited until these guys quit, and then they came up and said, Mark, get up. And I was in shock, so I was able to get up enough, and because I wanted to get out of there. And they grabbed me, and I said, get the cops. And when I said get the cops, all of them disappeared like roaches. They all ran. And the people I was with put me in the car. We went to got a police. He went up there, said, everybody's gone. There's nothing I can do. Go home. Forget it. And so I went to the hospital, and I didn't want to go to the hospital, but I had to go to the hospital. And later on, he kept going, well, Mark didn't want to go to the hospital. I knew I had to go to the hospital. He was so stupid. I just didn't want to go to the hospital, but I had to. And went to the hospital, and I was making jokes when I went in there because I was so thrilled to be alive. The endorphins were hitting in. I thought, oh, I've lived, So when they were looking at me, I said, I'm like a Timex. Take a look and keep on ticking. And the guy was listening to my lungs, and he turned white. And he ran, and then they came back with other nurses, and they put me on a gurney. And when they put me on that gurney, that was the end of it. the shock wore off a little bit. I became paralyzed from the waist down. And then, the real extent started kicking. And then they put me in triage. And then they found out my lung was punctured, and they had to do something to get the lung back up. Now, when I went in, see, right now we're in August, so it's the anniversary, but it's like a 3-week anniversary. I went in late July and came out in early August. So when I was there in July, it's training month. At any big hospital, it's training month. Never go to the hospital in training month unless you really can keep on top of what they're doing to your loved one. So I was in the triage, and this doctor who was dealing with me goes to this other doctor, and said, have you ever put a tube in, to inflate the lung? And she went, no. And he says, well, this is your chance. And see, I also was on a poor person on poor people's insurance. That pretty much says guinea pig. So I was a guinea pig. And she put the tube in. It was pretty horrifying. Now, I will tell you this a little bit, which is funny. Dumb, who wanted to impress people around, saying, I'm going to be a man. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to hold your hand while they do this. And I said, no, leave me alone. Go out now, nurse, leave me alone. And he said, no. So finally, I said, fine, just fine. So they started to put this tube in, and they said, now this is going to hurt. You can scream, which made me furious. I was furious I was having to go through this. So they make a cut in between the ribs, and they make an incision. They take their fingers and make a hole, and then they stick a tube in there. Well, they told me it was going to hurt. So he says, now, you squeeze my hand if it hurts. So when they started doing it, all of a sudden he started, I guess I squeezed, and all of a sudden I heard, stop it, you're squeezing, you hurt my hand, let go, and I was like, oh, just kill me now, kill me. And then when they put the tube in, he goes, I have to be a man and tell you I'm going to be sick. And I said, please leave me alone, please go away. So he went out in the thing, to be sick. But they put this tube in, and it turned out my lung, the doctor said my lung was like, because of the Marfans, it was like a wet tissue paper or a wet paper towel. And they would get it, this tube they put in went in wrong. So it was punching holes in my lung. It would almost inflate, and then it would collapse. So they come back to me and said, we have to redo it. And I said, fine, just do it. They did it again and got it up. And the lung would inflate, and then it would collapse again, over and over and over. And not only did I have that, where they had taken the first tube in and taken it out, I got a staph infection into my lung cavity. So they took me to ICU, and I started to look a little better, but every time they would get my lung up, it would go down. And because of all the trauma, I wasn't recovering. As a matter of fact, I wasn't recovering at all. And now I'll tell you, on poor people's insurance, when they think, we have enough to get him through at least dying, because on poor people insurance, when it's up, they pulled the plug. So they were letting doctors come in and look at me as examples for Marfan's because they hadn't seen one like that because I was pretty skinny. And they were letting people do tests, oh, you haven't done this before? Try this on him, So they would put people in doing these things. So I started to go downhill. And that's when I went back into, like the third time almost, going into ICU, the doctor said, they told me they were going to remove my lung, against my will. But then I heard them talking, and he said, oh, no, he's too weak. He's not going to make it. So they decided to let me die. And the way that they think is the humane way to let people die is they put you in a room with someone else who's dying, and they quit feeding you, and they let you die. They think that's humane. So they put you in a room. They quit really trying to save you, and they let you go. So they did that. They put me in a room with a guy that had been hit by a truck running from a drug deal, and he was going to die, and they had him strapped in a gurney, and they had me in my bed. And I'm going to have to stop for a commercial. But when we come back, I will pick this story back up, and I promise I'll get to the point. I'll get you through to the death process this next time. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. A judge in Russia today handed down a 9-year sentence to American basketball star Brittany Griner for drug possession and smuggling. Griner's fate now hanging on a high-stakes negotiation between Washington and Moscow, likely involving a prisoner exchange. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says the administration condemned the sentence.
She shouldn't have even been on trial. She's wrongfully detained. Absent that, we find the sentence reprehensible in its scope.
Griner showed little emotion, though her lawyer said she was, quote, very upset, very stressed. She said she did not intend to break the law by bringing vaping cartridges laced with hash oil into the country in her luggage. President Biden hosted business and labor leaders at a virtual summit today, the purpose to promote what his administration has dubbed the Inflation Reduction Act. It's the latest vehicle for Biden's business and climate agenda, and it's currently under consideration in the Senate. NPR's Eric McDaniel has more.
The event was basically an ad. Most of the big ideas that Biden has pushed since his time on the campaign trail were front and center. That's new money for clean technology and manufacturing, subsidies for health care, raising the minimum tax rates on corporations to 15%. Liz Schuler, she runs the AFL-CIO, said that the 12 million plus union workers that are part of her group were particularly jazzed about the tax stuff.
Asking the top 150 or so companies to start paying their fair share of taxes is music to our ears.
President Biden joked to the head of General Motors that if the Secret Service still let him drive, he'd buy an electric Corvette. Eric McDaniel, NPR News, the White House.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has suspended a state attorney from the Tampa area, accusing him of neglecting his duties. Stephanie Colombini with member station WUSF reports DeSantis cited the prosecutor's recent pledge he will not enforce abortion bans as an example.
Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren was one of dozens of prosecutors who signed a letter vowing not to press charges against people who seek or provide abortions. The Democrat also pledged not to prosecute violators of potential restrictions on health care for transgender youth. Governor DeSantis says that warranted suspension.
We are going to make sure that our laws are enforced and that no individual prosecutor puts himself above the law.
Warren issued a statement that says the governor's decision spits in the face of Hillsborough voters who elected him twice. He called the suspension a political stunt and a legal overreach. The governor argues Florida's constitution allows him to do it. For NPR News, I'm Stephanie Colombini in Tampa.
Republicans are seeing inflation, taxes, and immigration as prime Democratic weak spots worthy of attacking. The upcoming battle over an economic package Democrats are looking to push through the Senate. GOP hoping to derail parts of the measure, which embodies some of the top priorities of the Biden administration. On Wall Street today, the Dow was down 85 points. You're listening to NPR. The federal government today filed civil rights charges against 4 Louisville police officers in connection with a botched drug raid that led to the death of Breonna Taylor. The shooting of Taylor, a black woman, helped fuel racial justice protests that rocked the nation in 2020. Charges are part of an effort to hold law enforcement accountable for the 26-year-old woman's death after one of the officers was acquitted of state charges earlier this year. Only one officer was charged today who was on the scene the night Taylor died. Most of the charges stem from a faulty drug warrant. The Food and Drug Administration's decision not to let more younger adults get second COVID-19 boosters is frustrating people anxious to protect themselves. NPR's Rob Stein has the story.
The FDA considered broadening eligibility for second boosters beyond those age 50 and older and those with weak immune systems. But the FDA instead decided to speed up availability of new boosters that target the Omicron variant to September. That's left younger adults, like Jessica Herring of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, frustrated.
I want that extra protection. I feel like a booster would help.
But Herring was twice turned away from getting another booster because she's only 33. Some top federal health officials pushed to expand booster eligibility this summer, but the FDA decided most younger, otherwise healthy people are still protected from serious illness by their first 3 shots, and getting another booster now could interfere with hopefully more protective boosters in the fall. Rob Stein, NPR News.
Crude oil futures prices continue to move lower. Oil down $2.34 a barrel to settle at $88.54 a barrel in New York. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
We all have moments where our limits are tested. What I want to talk about is how we define those limits and what it means to exceed them. I'm Jay Williams. Check out my show, The Limits, where I talk to people who have overcome theirs and achieved great things in business, sports, and culture. Listen to The Limits from NPR.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fults, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And, of course, I'm coming to you from my home near Pensacola, Florida. Now, I'm going to continue on. I've been attacked. The doctors, because I heard them, they talked to me, and I heard them talking. And they just decided, well, he's not going to make it. Let's put him in this room. And they put me in a room with someone else that was expected to die. And they quit feeding me. And I didn't know at that time that that was considered a humane way to kill somebody. But in hospitals, too, they were kind of worried because of the tube thing and the staph infection I got and all that. I think they were really worried I might sue them over that kind of stuff. And when you're a poor person on poor insurance, they just kind of go, well, the doctors and nurses protect themselves. So they put you in they take care of business. If they've made a mistake, it's like instead of school, if you get an F, you just don't get an F on your paper, the person dies. So training meant not good. They put me in this room with this guy, and they said, now, he was hit by a truck getting away from a drug deal. And the drug dealers are looking for him. So if you answer your phone, don't tell anybody he's here. So I had that extra. And then my arms were out of place. I was kind of used to working with my arms out of place. So I could get to my phone every so often, but it took a huge effort. But I couldn't feed myself. But the problem was that I couldn't just feed myself. They were bringing food in. He was tied down on a gurney. And they would bring the food in, put a tray of food at the side of his bed. Now he's tied down in a gurney. They put it out of reach for me, and then they would come in later and take the food away and go, "Oh, well, you didn't eat." And that's the way they do it. And when I did have family coming in or friends, I begged them for food, and nobody would go get me anything. They just figured, well, he's dying, he's out of his head, and they knew, nobody brought me food, and I was asking for food. Now, let me tell you what, after all of this, if a dying person asked me for food, I crossed the desert for it. And actually, I've had that done. And I made sure they had exactly what they wanted. But the thing was, I was starving, and they wouldn't feed me. I asked for a feeding tube. They wouldn't do it. One nurse who came on had not been on the shift before he knew what was going on said, well, if you can't eat, we'll put a feeding tube. And I said, please do. And then he found out, and they didn't. So here I am starving. And this guy in this room is hollering 23 hours of the day, but he's not hollering in pain. He's out of his head. And he's hollering, "Nurse, nurse, bring me a cigarette. Nurse, nurse." He thought I was some guy named Jimmy, and he said, "Jimmy, you want to make $20?" He was just wouldn't leave me alone. So after about 3 days, he would be awake for 23 hours, and he would sleep 1 hour, like clockwork. So he kept me up. And if he went to sleep, I would try to get a nap, and just as I would start to fall asleep, he'd start again. Or the nurses would come in and do something, and he would start again. So I was awake a full week. And I have this raging staph infection going on. All of my organs from the sternum down are knocked loose. I didn't know that could happen, but it is the thing. My ribs were fractured, and I started losing weight. When I got out of that hospital, I was about 80 pounds. 6'2", 80 pounds. So I was watching all the stuff going on with them, and then what's going on with my parents. Let's put it like this. The night that I was in the hospital, I waited until when they were going to put the tubes in. I thought, I better let my parents know. So they called my parents. My father refused to even bring my mother to the hospital. She had to get her brother to come pick her up because my father didn't care, and he was embarrassed about me anyway. So he was glad. They were hoping that I would just die and go away. And then they could turn it into a tragedy. But my father wouldn't even bring my mother to the hospital. She had to come. And she was, they were totally weirded out. And it really was, the attack was just a random act of violence. These people just wanted to kill someone. And it wasn't anything I did or didn't do. They just saw a very skinny person they could attack. And I looked like a teenager when I was 30, believe it or not. I looked like I was 18 years old. Because, I just had no skin. I just looked very tight. I just looked like a young person. But, and while I was in the hospital, the attackers were trying to call me to harass me. So they had to hide me from that. And so here I'm, I'm dying. It's like dying like a twisting rope, And I just felt like my insides were just being twisted. And then you can't sleep because the guy's screaming. And then, two, you can't scream because you want to live. And your body wants to live. And if you close your eyes, you may die. And I wasn't quite ready. I wasn't ready. And so here I am. I'm dying. Everyone came to, my sister called friends and said, if you want to see him, you better come quick. He's going to die. My mother didn't even call my favorite cousin that I was always talking to. I didn't have her number with me. And I said, call Ellen. And they wouldn't even call that. They just were like, let's just quietly let this go away. So here I am. I'm dying. Nobody sat with me. Nobody would bring me food. And when I did ask for food, my mom thought I was out of my brain. She just went, well, he's dying. He can't eat, blah, 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 blah. So nobody did. So when they all left, and the first near-death experience started to happen, like 2:00 in the morning, and they put medicines in, had the machines, and I was laying there. A friend did bring some what they used to call jewel tone balloons. I don't even know if they make them anymore. But it was a big thing of balloons, and they tied it to the foot of my bed. And usually when you have an oxygen problem, they don't allow you to bring balloons in because it eats up the oxygen. So there was no problem because, didn't matter. So I was laying there and they had hooked up my machines, had done all that. And it's probably about 2 or 3 in the morning. And all of a sudden my machines started going off. The alarms started going off, and they were dealing with the machines. And they weren't paying attention to me. And all of a sudden, something caught my eye, and in the reflection of the balloons attached to the foot of my bed, I could see a woman sitting by my bed. When you looked physically, she wasn't there. In the reflection, there she was. And she was dressed in this, like a weeping widow's outfit with a veil and everything, had beautiful blonde hair. But you couldn't see her face. Her face was smudged out, and she looked very depressed. And she had her hand laying on my foot. And I thought, oh, crap. Here we go. And I was watching them. They were watching the machines, trying to make those work. And she was sitting there, and all of a sudden beyond her, beyond the foot of the bed, it was like it's all started to be projected on glass. And all of a sudden I saw this greenish yellow landscape that looked like a hill with trees coming off of it. And you could see these shadows of people moving on the hill coming towards me. And I'm watching that. And the people are getting closer to me. And when they started to, they called my name. And when they called my name, I started to vibrate from the sternum up. And I could feel myself starting to pull out of my body every time they said my name. And they were like, Mark, Mark, Mark. And they were getting closer. And the closer they got, it was like, I know them. I felt like I knew them. And then I started going, something's weird. And I realized I couldn't feel any pain anymore. And not only did I not feel pain, I felt great. I felt the best I'd ever felt in my life. I'd never been out of pain. I have chronic pain. I mean, now I have chronic pain. I can't sit, stand, walk, lay down, nothing. It's all chronic. So all of a sudden, all the pain went away. And these people just seemed so hungry for me. And so I was watching them. And I thought, waiting any moment for whatever's going to happen. And then you start to see the sheets. It looks like sheets of glass, but it's like everything starts downloading from your brain. And you're seeing this, it's like greenish phosphorescent letters and information just downloading on these sheets of glass, but you understand all of it. You understand what's going on, and it's all downloading, trying to get out of your body before you die. And then you see the tunnel, but and then you feel like you're kind of standing on something like a little something that's sticking out, like a little platform. And what that is the pituitary gland that you're seeing on a cellular level, and you're preparing to download from your brain, from your third eye, into the consciousness. Now, I have to go to a break, but when we come back, I will continue telling you what happened. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Paratalk Radio is your one-stop for all things paranormal, the unknown, and the supernatural. Join us every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central for discussions and guests on topics such as ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, UFOs, and more. This broadcast is rated M for mature and intended for listeners over 16 on paratalkradio.com.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fults, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm coming to you from my beautiful home near Pensacola, Florida. Now, when I left, I was talking about, I was going through the near-death process. All these people were calling my name. You see that phosphorescent green. That's because what our spirits and stuff are made out of we have chloroplast in our cells, and chloroplast are like water in plants that cause I can't even think of what it's called, where that photosynthesis, and that green is kind of like an algae color. And so a lot of ectoplasm and stuff has that plasma, has that chloroplast in it. So it's greenish yellow. So I'm looking at the hill. I'm looking at the people calling me. I'm watching all this stuff downloading. I'm watching the woman sitting there with her hand on my foot, waiting for me to go. And then I look forward and I see a tunnel. And I'm like, all right, here we go. And I was still kind of like on that what felt like a little platform, which was the pituitary gland. Like I said, you're seeing on a cellular level. You're seeing all your brain downloads. So it's on a cellular level. So I started projecting through the tunnel and going up. And I got just up to the top and was seeing over. And I could see the lights, and I could see the shapes, and I could see the huge circular forms there. And I was feeling like I was being drawn to a certain thing. And then all of a sudden, everything paused. And I thought, what's happening? What's happening? And it paused. And then all of a sudden, I kind of drew back. I was still standing on that little platform. But the sheets of like transparent plasma material, you couldn't see the stuff downloading anymore. But I could still see the people, and they were just standing there. And the lady was sitting there with her hand on my foot. And I thought, what's happening? And then I realized they're waiting to see if I die. And these people, during all of this, the head nurse had come in. My machine was going off. They took the machine out. They brought it back with the alarm off. And she was chewing one of the candy stripers out. And she said, you put the wrong medicine into his machine. And the girl goes, no, I didn't. It had his name on it. And she said, no, it didn't. You put the wrong medicine in his machine. And if it had gone through, it was too thick to go through. She said, if that had gone through, he would be dead. And I thought, and so when they left the room, everything was fading out a little bit, but she was still there. And I said, I understand you were here to see me through, and you can stay or go, but I thank you. And that's when, she was there. You could see her for a while, but you could see other people walking around the bed and everything. I mean, and I've sat with people who are dying, and that's what you see. You start to see dead people. They start seeing dead people. So it was very busy, and then it started to just fade out. So I lived that night. And the next morning, they came in talking about my lung. They wanted to take out my lung, but they said, well, you would never survive it. They left. They still weren't feeding me. They were still expecting me to die. So I made it to my phone. I called my mother, and I said, when I die, I'm dying. I almost died last night, and I said, I'm dying. You have got to come here and sit with me, and we've got to talk about what's going to happen, because the guys that attacked me were arrested, and they were arrested under attempted first-degree murder. I wasn't dead yet, but they were attempted first-degree murder because they knew I was dying. And they went out there and they got those boys. The feds got involved because when the roommate, dumbest, had hollered at them and said, stop, he's got a bone disorder. And they said, well, he must have AIDS. So when they attacked, it kept on and crushed me for 15 minutes. That became a hate crime. Well, somebody told me there was a blip on CNN about it, but I don't know. But it was in the papers where I was at, everywhere. It was a big case. It became, the feds were in it because it was a cycle of hate going on, just like we're in right now. And so many people were being attacked and being killed for just whatever anyone perceived. And 2 weeks before I had been attacked, there had been a poor boy attacked probably by these same people. And he had lost his spleen. He lost an eye. They did the same thing they kind of did to me. And I think it was them. Allegedly, I would think it's them. But that's my opinion. It was just kind of in the area where they kind of live. And so I had to call my mother to get her to come in and sit with me. So she came that night. Usually they would go sit with people who were dying all night long and wait until they're dead. They didn't want to do that with me. They wanted me to die, and then they'd make a tragedy out of it. They did that to her youngest brother. When he got killed, they made a big tragedy out of his death. And I thought, and I knew, see, the week before all of this, or the month before, my father had all these terrible suits from the 70s, all these polyester leisure suits. And she, for some reason, thought if it wasn't bad, it was still wearable. And she had been trying to force this lime green polyester leisure suit on me, 3-piece. She kept trying to make me take this stupid suit. And I said, it was ugly in 1972. I'm not wearing that. And I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to die, and she's going to bury me in that stupid green leisure suit. And I thought, oh, all right, the suit won't, but all right. But I thought, oh, my God, I don't want to be buried in that. So she came and was going to sit the night with me, and she got to see what a horrible time it was. And the guy in there, at first, you start off being nice with him, but 2 o'clock in the morning, she was like, shut up, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to hit you, beat you to death. And she got to see what they were doing to me, because she really didn't get the concept. They were trying to kill me. But I was like, well, they don't see me living very long. I don't have very much insurance, so they're going to let me die. And I said, they're doing it. They're doing it right now. And she got to see it. And so she was sitting there, and the guy did his 1 hour sleep. He finally went to sleep, and I thought she was there, and I went, I'm going to try to sleep. And I started drifting off, but I also started to die again. And she was there, and I thought, I can die now. I can go. And I started going through the process. And she was sitting there by me. And I won't tell you what was going on with this near-death one, because it was so gruesome that it's hard for me to tell on a family hour show, because it was gruesome. But I was dying. I was again going through the process, very, very, very close. And while she was sitting with me and I was going through the near-death experience and I was getting ready to die, the woman who I had seen by my bed, I had not told my mother about her because I thought it would freak her out. So she is sitting there, and this beautiful blonde-haired woman appears in the middle of the room. She said she had on a candy striper, old-fashioned candy striper outfit, pink. And her hair was in this beautiful French braid. And she was holding a clipboard, and she stood there and smiled at my mother very sweetly. And Mom was watching her, and all of a sudden I was going through the process. My body was trying to let loose. And all the tubes that were in my side really bothered me because I was terrified of them. And all of a sudden I was having a vision, and the tubes tore out, and I was bleeding to death. So I was laying there. I had not been able to move in weeks, kind of thing. I was just paralyzed. All of a sudden I woke up screaming and lunged and was going head first, going to go off the bed, land head first on the floor. That would have been it. I would have just been dead. And my mother caught me. And when she caught me, she looked over, and that girl was moving toward the door. She turned and smiled very sweetly again and disappeared. And after that, the next morning, I was still going through, my body was still trying to shut down. My mother had to go home. She was so fried from one night, she couldn't handle it. So she was home. She had my Aunt Lydia come and sit with me. And they had made the mistake of telling her, because she asked them, I was begging them. They would tell me they were going to move me, which they weren't because I didn't have good insurance. So my mother was there, and she said, you have to move him where he can rest. And they said, oh, well, we're going to move him tomorrow. Well, when my aunt was there, my mom had gone home, and I was having an experience which happens with your nerves, which is the room spun around, and all of a sudden I was on the ceiling looking down at the floor. The room had tilted. And my aunt asked the nurse, and the nurse said, oh, that's just his nerves because he's dying, And she says, when are they going to move him? And the nurse said, oh, we're not going to move him. Now, my aunt says, will you just wait a minute? So they had made the mistake of lying to my mother. And so she called my mother. Now, this is what, you don't lie to my mother, and you don't tell my mother what you're going to do. So it's because she would always say, you can't tell me what to do. She called that hospital. Now, this I do bless my mother for, because they got on her. She got to see how they were treating me. She didn't like it, and they lied to her. So she called that hospital, and it was a nuclear bomb. In 10 minutes after that phone call, they came and put me on the fastest moving gurney I have ever been on or seen. And I was given a private room, and they said, oh, don't you worry about it. We'll take care of this. Whatever she got onto them about. I had a private room. I actually got to rest. And then I began to recover. And the doctor was absolutely shocked. He sat in front of me and said, you threw us 8 curveballs. Luckily, we caught them, but they did not expect me to do it. Those guys were arrested under attempted first-degree murder. Everyone expected me to be dead. My family expected me to be dead. I expected me to be dead. The nurses expected me to be dead. And guess what? And the lung they were going to take out? I still have that lung. And guess what? That lung healed itself, and I'm using it. That's, if they had taken it out, I would have been on oxygen for the rest of my life, and I would have gone downhill. I still have the lung. So I recovered. Now, they thought I was going to be paralyzed, possibly, for a while. And there was a place that, rehab place that was just bugging the stew out of me. And the doctor was mad. He's like, tell them to leave him alone. We'll figure it out. So one day I said, put a chair over there. I got out of that bed. Now that was the hardest thing I'd ever done up until that point. I walked to that chair, and it was like walking on glass. I got to the chair. I looked at them. I said, now leave me alone. And then I walked on glass all the way back to my bed, and I've been walking ever since. They were just shocked. They just didn't know. They were looking at me like they just didn't know. I hadn't eaten in 7 days. I hadn't slept, in a week at that time. I was totally. Nobody knew what. They were kind of freaked out. And then when I survived, began the process afterwards, which was the court and all of that stuff. I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a minute because we're going to be going to a break, so it'll be a little complicated. But I will tell you, when I was in the hospital recovering, the mob and the outlaw bikers approached me about them going and killing these guys. I kid you not. It was such a big case that they had gotten wind of it, and I had a friend who worked at a place I knew was kind of different, but I didn't know he worked for the mob. And I didn't know. I mean, my friend at the time, Brenda, she had a boyfriend who was an outlaw biker. I didn't know what an outlaw biker was, but I found out real quick. So when I come back to finish up the stories, I'll let you know those stories because I think they're hysterical. And it just shows life is weirder than you can ever expect. My life has been weirder than any movie. It has. But anyway, but when we come back from break, I will tell you about that incident of the mob and the outlaw bikers and what happened in court. So now, all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. I'll be right back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fults, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And I live in near beautiful Pensacola, Florida. And I've been telling you about what happened when I was attacked and was dying and came back. And the interesting thing happened when I was recovering. People that I knew started coming up to me, but I didn't know. You know, one of my friends worked for some strange people. I didn't know it was the mob. And the mob, through him, and he's deceased now, so God bless him, that they came and had an offer. And they said, all you have to do is say yes, and we'll take care of it. They'll be gone. And, you know, I didn't know what to say, so I went, that is so sweet. Thank you. That's very considerate. But I think I want to try to do this my way through the courts. And if you do it, then it'll look like I killed them. I said, but that is so sweet of you. Thank you so much. And they were okay with that. Then the outlaw bikers approached me. I didn't know what an outlaw biker was, you know. And these guys were going to have to go into a prison. There was kind of like a midway jail, you know, kind of thing. They would have to go to right now they were kind of like in a holding place until I got out. So they approached me because they had people inside the jails. And they said, what we want to do is we want to chain them to a tree, cover them with tar, and set them on fire. But you have to tell us you're okay with that. Seriously. And I went, that's so sweet of you. Thank you so much. But I think I want to do this my way. And they accepted that, but they said, but we'll make sure they're roughed up in there. And I went, that's okay. So I think, you know, because when I got out, it was a year of court cases and stuff like that, and which was exhausting. I mean, you know, I was still recovering, and I took them to court, which, you know, the DA said they want you to just go home and get over being mad, and I said that ain't happening. So they picked the wrong person, really, and I'd heard that the father, the youngest one, was wanting to offer me $30,000 to drop it, which, you know, I was very poor. I was eating food. I was using $5 to $10 a week to eat on. So $30,000, that should have been like $3 million. So, but I turned it down. I said, no, we're going to court. I didn't know at the time it wouldn't have mattered. It was a feds had stepped in. It was going to court. But I thought that I was very proud of myself that I could turn down $30,000 because I knew other people who were afraid to take these kind of things to court. And we went to court, and they had 3 lawyers. My witnesses, who were my roommates, when they thought apparently that I was going to be rich, and they were making plans for my money. They were telling my mother what they would do when I got out of the hospital. They'd build a ramp, and, you know, they would take care of me and my money, you know. And so when they found out there was no money to skim me out of, they didn't want to be the witnesses, so they dropped out. And actually, the DA, when they looked at them, said they beat the wrong person. And I was like, and this guy, that lawyer, became a judge later, and I thought, whoa, you know. They were not impressed. So it was just me. And they had gone and found 40 witnesses. Nobody would come forward. They had no problem watching it and everything, but they didn't want to get involved. And I had to be grilled by 3 lawyers. And I had hired an extra lawyer. My mother insisted I hire her cousin who had been the DA at one time. And he was in it for their interests, I found out. And I'm the one who paid him. So he was like, didn't want me to pursue it in a way, da-da-da-da-da-da. So I went to court, put on my little 3-piece suit. I ate them for lunch. But them and their lawyers too. But, it was a hate crime. So they were all terrified. There were no victims' rights. Sharon Tate's family, because of them, we have victims' rights. We have victims can give their, stand up and give their, talk about their sons and daughters and whoever's been murdered. We have rights because of those people. And I really did not have rights. But I made this system as an American citizen. I stood up. I took them to court. I won. Now, the last thing the DA told me, they told me I was the best witness they had ever seen. It was the first case of that type in Chattanooga that had been prosecuted, won. So it was one for the books. And because everybody else either didn't have a way to protect themselves or they were terrified to do this. And I won. Now, the judge said I would get restitution. And later on when I called, they said, oh, no, we're not going to do that. They just said that for the newspaper. So, and I was so tired, I thought, whatever. I didn't care about the money. What I cared about was winning my case, proving, because I proved without a doubt, these people didn't know who I was. I didn't know who they were. It was unprovoked. They were drunk. They wanted to attack somebody. So it all turned out good for me. And, but it was hard. And after all of that, my life really started. And I started over, and I had to kind of relearn my whole life. I had been thrown into the lake, and I had to swim. And because of the Dumb and Dumber, I learned how to really assess people and really start not trusting people to prove to me who they were, to be able to look under the skin to begin with and listen to my instincts. And I learned how now I have great friends. I have a great relationship. I had nothing. And after that, I went and lived in the projects, which I loved that because it gave me time to heal and get ready and then start. And from then, I had to relearn. So I had to relearn who I was, my own consciousness, my own morals. The stuff that my family was doing was not me. And I could not be held accountable because it's the way they wanted to think. And two, they kind of showed themselves to me. It kind of affected me that, they were willing for me to die to make themselves comfortable. They thought they were going to be embarrassed. And one thing my dad did say, he said I had guts, and that's the truth. But now, at this age, I went through all of that and more, but if I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't be who I am. So I can't begrudge anything. And it was going to happen anyway. It happened. It was meant to happen. And today when I was sitting talking to a lady, talking to her spirit of her deceased son who had just died, and I realized, and people go, well, do you talk to spirits? Well, yeah. My experiences, and I tell them, I've been through the near-death experience. I've been murdered. And I have a knack for it. And I used it today. 30 years later on down the road, I've helped many people. And I'm very humbled that the universe has given me the abilities and to help people. And it brings me a lot of joy. And right now, I live, I'm 60, and my friends, people don't live to be very long. And I've done several, they didn't make it past 40. And some people live to be old, and some of them don't. And I've lived to be an old man. And I'm so grateful. And I want to finish whatever I need to finish. So now I'm working on my album. I'm working on show ideas. I'm working on books. I'm working on costumes. I'm working on videos. I'm going to make videos to go with my album. I'm having fun. And I think out of that material and creating out of love, we're going to do just fine. And the death experience, one thing I want to tell people is all you start to feel is love. You feel wanted. You feel loved, you feel drawn, they call your name, and you go. And then when you go up that tunnel, then you get to the top, and there you are. You go to where you need to go. And it's the best I've ever felt, the most loved I've ever been felt. They wanted me. I knew who they were, and they were desperate for me to be there. And so the next time it comes time for me to go, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to hesitate. At that time, I wasn't hesitating too much. It just wasn't time for me to go. And now I can come back and tell people, don't be afraid. But I do believe when people are dying, if you can handle it, sit with them, be with them. If they want something to eat, give them something to eat. If they just need your company, because we don't know what it's going to be like. You have to mourn your life. You have to mourn your life and mourn your death. And it just helps to have someone sitting there as it's like reverse birth. You're being born again, but you're being born into a spirit. And a spirit, when you're born, a spirit comes into you. When you die, the spirit goes out. And it's just until you want to see it with the person, if possible, because it's as miraculous as it being there for the birth. It's an amazing thing. And sometimes you'll get to see the people, they'll tell you, I see dead people, and you'll see dead people. Because guess what? They come in droves. When my mother was dying, she was talking to her sisters who had been dead. All of them were dead. And she was asking them, does it hurt to die? And they went, no. And I said, it really doesn't, because it feels great once you get past. It's just the physical part. So I hope in some way this has helped some of you. I hope that you understand, enjoy your life, make it as fun and beautiful and creative as you can. And when it's time, just embrace it, go with it, go with these people, go into the next level. I promise you it's great. It's wonderful. It's loving. And if you aren't getting love here, you're going to get it over there. Now, again, if you want to contact me, you can contact me at Live and Let Live Metaphysical Store, 4622 Southley Road, Pensacola. You can call Sal and Matthew and ask them, what days I'm there if you're coming in. If you want to see me on Facebook, you can always contact me, Mark Elliott Fults, or Chattanooga Chills. I have 2 pages. So you can contact me, Mark Elliott, ELLIOTT, Fults, FULTS. And you can contact me on Facebook. I hope that the content that I have here, I hope it helps somebody. And now next show, I'm going to talk about off of this, the things I learned about the process. And I'm going to talk about the spirit. Okay, we think of ghosts and we go, woo. I'll show you that spirits have a basis in physical sense, how it's created, how it functions, what it's made out of, because it's a spirit delivery system, what goes on, why is there a tunnel, what happens when you get up there, and what is the afterlife. So the next show next week, I'm going to talk about our spirit, how it's made, how it functions, and what kind of goes on past that. And to help you understand metaphysical science, maybe a little bit more on that end of it, so that you go, oh, that's what's happening. Well, now we've come to the close of our show tonight. Thank you so much for coming and listening to me. And I'm always very humbled, very grateful. And I want to wish you all a good night. And just go out there, live your life. Don't worry about the other part. And when it happens, embrace it, be happy, be loved. Good night, all. Good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.